Welcome to another episode of Break Time, the show that pumps the brakes on the busy lives of our guests, allowing them to slow down and open up. Today, we're joined by Garry Best of Best Property Services in Newry, a fifth-generation property business with over 130 years' experience. And what makes this conversation interesting is Garry isn't just running a long-established property firm. He's someone that's worked across valuations, land, acquisition, auctions, negotiations, and often, sometimes, in the most complex and sensitive property situations you'll find. He's built a reputation not just on deals, but on sound judgement, trust, and a very hands-on understanding of how property actually works on the ground. Beyond that, he's quite the enigma. He's somewhat of an expert baker, an avid hiker, and even spent months as a ranch hand in Texas, Montana, and Kansas, which we'll definitely come back to. So, Garry, welcome to the podcast. Delighted to have you here today. It's quite a lot of content, a lot to get into here. So, when people hear about a property CEO, they might have this image of this polished deal maker, expensive car, focus on transactions, driven by money and margins. But that's not you at all. You're an auctioneer, a landman, an early walker, very vested in your customers and very vested in your family as well. So your business is a generational business, and you're focused on family, leisure, the land, and you're also now seeing a new generation coming through with Kyle and Olivia into the business. So when you look back on the history of your life in the business, what do you think most formed your character? What instincts and the way that you approach life?
Yeah, well, thank you, Caroline, for having me here. It's a pleasure. And really, when I look back on it, I mean, my father was a big influence. I had never intended going into the business. From my early days, I fully intended to farm. But of course, I had two brothers. One had been to Reading University before me, did the estate management degree. I was only 15 months younger than him, but I followed my elder brother, John, who went to Newcastle University to read agriculture. And I thought it was good for him, it was good for me. Mm-hmm. And graduated in 79 and fully intended to, at that stage, to be farming. But it turned out that John and I, who always got on well before that, started to clash a bit, and he was obviously 5 years at home on the family farm ahead of me, and quite rightly had a senior position. My mother, thankfully, could sense things just weren't good in those first few months in the late summer of 79. And so she could sense that. Craig, on the other hand, having been to Reading University, was very much a bit of an English chap, and he did not like the Wellywood farmer of County Armagh coming into his office. So we gradually, my mother said, look, just try it for a day or two, see how you get on. So I tried it for a couple of days a week, doing both, and then as time went on, I realised not fighting weather, not fighting animals dying, not fighting animals being sick. You can actually get paid for something a few weeks after it happens, all these sort of things. So gradual transition, and over probably it took about 6 or 8 months, and I realised, I have a great opportunity here to be involved in farming, but not in the way I'd intended. But dealing with farmers, talking to farmers, but it's about land and land lettings and land valuation. And I realised I'm going to try this, and really never looked back from those days.
Things were laid for you, really. And was your father happy to have you in the business?
He was, yeah. And there are certainly, I mean, at that time we were in an office at 15 Trevor Hill in Newry. There were 5 of us, of which 3 were family. My father, Craig, myself, and then 2 assistants. And there would be times that my father and Craig would clash a bit from time to time. So I kind of became the referee in that scenario. But I can happily say that having worked with my father for 16 years until he passed away, we never had a crossword.
Yeah, the family dynamics.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So at that time, I say it was 5 in Trevor Hill. There was an office in Banbridge run under the name of Matthews and Best. And then there was also an office in Lisburn run under the name of Mayers and Company, which is an old established firm. But Craig stayed in the business till 1992, and those were kind of his creations, and they gradually filtered out. But undoubtedly, my father was a major influence, and I mean, he was not full-time in Uri by any means, and a lot of his life he was a livestock auctioneer in Ulster Farmers Mart, and Mondays he would have driven to Enniskillen, Tuesdays he would have driven to Belfast to either the old days was Robson's, and then it became Adams. Wednesday he would usually have been in Uri. Thursday back to Enniskillen again, Armagh, the Shamble Sale Yard in Armagh, and then Saturday Limavady. So by Saturday evening, my mother would regularly be handing out the Bradisol tablets. And in those days, the numbers were much bigger than whenever I did a bit of livestock auctioneering, and the numbers often were 600-700 on a really busy day, up to 900, 1,000 head of cattle. So it was full on, but he enjoyed that. He was the director of Ulster Farmers Mart, made a lot of good connections, and then over time, he, I think, when he sensed that maybe some of his family might move into this business, he took an interest in Dromore Livestock Mart and Points Pass livestock sales, and those were certainly influential whenever it came to handing over the baton to me. And I suppose my first auction, which you'd never forget, and I'd probably been clocking to him, as in taking down the bids and so on for a couple of years at that stage. And we were doing this, or he was doing this furniture auction in a nice old house out the Caswell Road in Banbridge. And at that stage, I knew the process of getting the numbering, and we had various staff who would come in, do the numbering, all the bits and pieces. And he said to me about halfway through the auction, before I finish this, I'm going to hand you, hand you the hammer. So I'm just giving you that bit of warning.
You're ready for it.
Thought I was ready for it, but I was not ready for it. So about 30 lots, there might have been 400 or 500 lots of furniture, house contents, and about 30 lots to go. He just finished one lot, handed me the hammer, and didn't even say carry on.
That was you.
Of course, you think out there's loads of bidders. It looked easy whenever he was doing it, and you just suddenly go blind, and you start to panic and think, where are the bids? And then you spot someone and you hold on to them, but you're missing all the other bidders. And
you realise how difficult it actually is once you're in those shoes.
Once I was glad to get that one over, and very happy to be at the end of that auction. He gave me a bit of a debrief later on that evening, and he said, "We'll do a few more of those, and you'll be fine." And really, after having done that bit, and then the next time I was talking to him was obviously easier. And then probably a few part house clearance auctions, and by that stage, Craig was doing the calf sales ring in Dromore Livestock. He'd been doing that for a few years on a Thursday morning, so I went over, observed him for a couple of weeks, and then he couldn't wait to get out of there.
Started to glean some information from them, That's the best way to do it.
Took a few weeks to get to know who the dealers were, the buyer, the sellers, and just get a bit of a feel for it. But no, I think it was probably 3 weeks, and he was gone out of there.
The real learning curve with that as well. You know, I mean, you're thrown into something, you've got no option. You have to get on with it. You know, and obviously your father so skilled at it, and you stepping into those shoes to carry that on. That's difficult. That's really pushing yourself outside comfort zones, if anything I've ever heard.
Yeah, and it certainly had its difficult moments. But the worst was yet to come, and to a certain extent, insofar as I think I was maybe a year, maybe a year and a half into more, and my father said, I think it's maybe time you did a few stints on a Saturday in Points Pass Livestock, and that was a pig sale on Saturday, and there was a couple of different rings.
Are they a lot faster?
Not necessarily, no.
Okay.
But well, I suppose the sows with litters would be different, but what I was handed was the fat sow ring. So the sows that are nearly ready for slaughter, they've had their life and so on. And my father gave me one week. He did it, and I clerked to him, and I thought, there are no bidders around this ring. These guys are just standing looking at me, and some well-seasoned dealers and very small numbers of people, and you really have to make the bid yourself and hope you get someone in before the hammer drops, and that was a real trial. Thankfully, there was a great lady in the office, this lady Peggy, and she had been there for a long time, knew the ins and outs, and was fairly sure in my first few weeks I was going to be sent to her afterwards. Peggy, lot 40, lot 60, and I think there was one maybe number 70. I've got them. Could you find me a buyer for them? I really don't want to be taking them
shout
home.
out to Peggy then.
Yeah. And the dealers enjoyed a rookie auctioneer and how they would just try and leave them high and dry.
I think definitely that was a test, a challenge there. I think they saw you coming with that one.
Yeah.
So, and going on from that the auctions, because you still auction today, and you do some charity work as well with auctions. And I've heard that now that you're very skilled at this, that you daren't. I mean, when I was going to auctions, I was told, sit in your hands, don't move your hands. But I've been told that you can't even look at you and you'll take a bid. So
no, I wouldn't be just as bad as that. No, in the charity auctions, I thoroughly enjoy at this stage of my life. And I think I did the Newry Hospice one for 20 or 25 years. And it was always a great audience and a very giving audience. So it was
a lot easier
than
dealing
fat pigs in Points Pass.
Yeah,
for sure.
Would definitely say so.
Yeah.
And can you see then the next generation with that skill set? Have you give them the same severe test that your father gave you?
Not as yet, and I'm not even sure if they actually want to go down that road.
Right.
And really, my land assistant James has shown interest in doing that. So he has done several land auctions, smaller properties, not just to get them going so far. And I think probably in terms of the land department going forward, after I finish, I think James is probably going to be my likely auctioneer successor.
Well, at least it's going to continue.
Yes,
because that's a skill set in itself. It really is.
Yeah,
fantastic. And obviously, you still get that buzz from it, that kick. I know when we were doing deals with different things, it's that when you walk away and it's a really successful auction, you're bound to get a real high with that as well.
Yeah. The land auctions, the in-house auctions, generally work very well, and for most of my 45 years in business, land has been on an upward curve. It was only just after the boom busted. It was quiet for a few years and actually took a drop, understandably. But there is a lot of satisfaction when you have a satisfied client, no matter what the property is nice to have, and they've enjoyed that. But sometimes the way land has gone, and especially in the past 4 or 5 years, and it continues to rise. And I have normally in our land auctions there'd be a pause while we would relay where we're at. If it's a farm in 3 or 4 lots, we would adjourn for 5 or 10 minutes, go down to an office on the lower level where the vendor usually is, have a discussion with them and discuss whether we put it in the market or whether we try it again or whether we withdraw it, whatever it might be. So they are in most cases waiting there, and sometimes if I get an instruction, yes, go ahead and put it in the market, which means it's going to be sold that day. Sometimes it doesn't budge at all from there. Sometimes it moves on considerably, which sometimes could be 100,000 or 150,000. And I come back to the lower office and I say, we achieved. And if, for instance, it was one of those good days where it was maybe 100 over when we first put it in the market, the look of disbelief and excitement, and genuinely a very satisfied customer is an enjoyable part of the business.
It's stories like that. And even when you talk about that you still do business with that particular guy, that's testament to your business as well, because everything that you've done, you want to sell the land, but you do it with empathy and caring, and you want that longevity. You want people to come back to you time and time again. They're buying the first part of land, or they're selling that land, or they're buying a house, and that goes generational into families as well. And we can see it in our business that if you treat somebody right and you'll sell them the first car, you want that person to stay with you for life. You want them to repeat, because you're delivering that level of service and you're giving them what they want. It's not about the transaction. It's about that individual, what their needs are, what their wants are, how the service being delivered with them. And that's testament to your business. Those people are still coming back to you today.
Yeah, and it's very satisfying whenever some of the residential team might say to me, I was with someone there was asking about you, and they were asking, is he still in the business? He must be very old. I know, these sort of comments, but I do thoroughly enjoy just hearing a name I recognise, or it could be a generation down, or maybe even a couple of generations down, and the fact that they are coming our way. It's definitely satisfying.
We have the same, when people come into the showroom, they'll ask for my dad, is Freddie still around? And, and when you relay those names back to him, you can see his face light up, going like, I remember Jerry, and he'll tell you all about the deal, exactly what happened, his first car, and he has that whole memory, that whole listing of exactly what happened. So on both sides, it's great to the fact that you're still retaining that business, and it's not about forgetting about that sale. It's you're remembering that whole relationship with that particular person.
Yeah, and there was one actually just comes to mind as we're talking, that Adrian in the office had said to me a few months ago about, and he said, she mentioned something about a penny farthing bike. And I said, yeah, that's right. And we not only sold her mother's property, but there were some incredible antiques.
Yeah, I'm sure.
That, including a penny farthing bike. And that was the one and only penny farthing bike I ever sold. But it was any time I drive past it, and that house is still standing.
You still, remember
that image.
Yeah. And what drives you on? What's over the years? Was it personal ambition? Is it duty to the business? The fact that you carry this legacy of your father and your grandfather before.
Yeah, and I think it's. As I said earlier, having that 16 years constantly with my father, and I suppose one of the memorable sayings that I took away from Vistage is that the best salespeople will ask questions and listen, and that I discovered that saying after my father's time, but I would have been very much tuned into everything he was saying and trying to take on board what he was saying. And he used to have, he was renowned for, in his inside pocket, maybe having these, what we call buyer record cards. And they're little, probably 3-inch by 6-inch cards you can put in the inside of your pocket. But these were stationery from Ulster Farmers Mart. And when he would have finished auctioning, and he'd be talking to different people, and if they said, well done, maybe I need you to do a valuation and a wee bit loud, and he'd just take a wee note, note the phone number down the buyer record cards. That's just where he kept.
That was his database.
And he would always have said, if you don't write it down, you're not going to do it. It's not going to get done. Don't rely on your memory. It's not going to work.
I know.
And I mean, because he was away at livestock marts in our early years, a lot of the time, our phone in the house at meal times would just never stop. That was the time he could do a bit of the office work. And out would come the buyer record cards, and he'd be jotting things down. But that memory of meals regularly been interrupted by points past 225. You know?
Yeah, a 3-digit remember. Yeah, I remember those 3-digit numbers. You know what I mean? It's like
they're very much etched in lifetime.
Yeah, I know. And you mentioned the Visage then, that program. Can you tell me a bit about that? Because that was a real sounding board for you to work alongside peers, to look at other businesses and how they've done certain things.
Yeah, Visage discovered me, I suppose, in 2003, and usually it was as I discovered later, it was a situation where somebody would nominate somebody they might know and say, we feel this person might be suitable for Vistage, and if the existing incumbents didn't really want you there, then you would not be there. But it was it's a worldwide organisation. Vistage is really what is known as. There were at the time I joined, there were two groups in the north, and there was one in Dublin. But really, the principle of 15 like-minded business people, different ages, different size of companies, but no conflicting business. So there was no other auctioneer, estate agent in the group at any time, and that was kind of the rules. There was a chairman, a guy called Edmund Johnson, and he had an accountancy background. But the idea was you would meet once a month at a neutral venue, and you would take a day looking in on your business as opposed to being actually in the business. The first meeting I went to and thought, yeah, this is all very good. And at that time it cost about 850 a month.
And when did that start? What year did that?
That was about 2003.
Okay.
And I had been on various courses here and there, but this one definitely appealed to me. And after the first session, I said to my two directors back then, Conor and Ciara, I said, look, it's kind of hard to describe this, but I think just trust me, this is worth paying this money every month. If after 6 months you guys need to pull me up on it, by all means do so. And really never look back. And Edmund would come to our offices once a month for a 2-hour one-on-one session, going through problems, issues, all sorts of things.
Yeah.
And he was a great master at the saying, let silence do the heavy lifting, whereby he would ask you something, you would talk a bit, he would know there's a bit more there, but you're not letting it come out, and he would just be silent.
You fill the void.
I've got to go into a bit more detail here, I've got to expand a bit more on this. And and the other great thing about it was some of the international speakers we had. So most days, the venues were all members' venues. So you'd literally rotate around the members, their own workplace. The benefit of that was you would get the critique of the group. They'd have to get a guided tour, ask questions, ask the staff questions if they want. So you're getting a good critique on your premises, your staff. And probably eight or nine times a year there would be a speaker in the morning, usually international speaker, they could be talking about company law, they could be talking, they could be sales guys, but generally all very good and well renowned. And most of those would have been Vistage affiliated, and they could be in America, they could be in Australia, they could be in UK, but they were getting a lot of exposure. So it was a great learning curve for me, and I often looked around fellow business people in Uri, solicitors, accountants, people an awful lot smarter than me, and some of them I did say to, look, surely some of you guys must be able to. You need a peer group to get better ideas on how other businesses are doing and all these sort of things. But a lot of them were just happy to carry on, and that's just nature, I suppose.
You have to have the right mindset and psyche, though, to be able to, embrace that. Listen to other speakers and opening your mind to new things. And even in 2003, that was not many businesses were doing that.
No, probably not back then. But I mean, there'd be some days I'd come back, whether it be from Coleraine or Belfast, and no radio on the car. You're just buzzing. You're thinking over all these things the speaker said, and it really was a great opportunity, and it's certainly encouraging Kyle and Olivia to find a peer group. Kyle has found a peer group, thankfully, which I gave him a bit of a nudge into. And coincidentally, Edmund Johnson, that same Vistage chairman who is retiring shortly, has been involved in the same peer group that Kyle has joined up. But I think it's for anybody who is hungry for knowledge and really wants to progress, it's a peer group. To me, it's just something made a big impact on my life. Yeah.
And probably business and personal life as well. Listen to other businesses. Everybody's got the same problems in some shape or form.
Yeah, I mean, you could count them in both hands. The 10 things that 15 different people reel off, they're pretty well all similar, just different scales, different sizes. But they're
very thought-provoking, because then somewhere in there's an answer, and all of a sudden there could be a light bulb go off for you, and you're going like, yes, that's exactly what I have to do. So to encourage all businesses to really provoke and search and keep growing, and how they do that is to look ahead to other businesses as well and try and get that experience.
And before we visited them, in my last comment on it, they have a great process of dealing with problems, and before a meeting, the chairman would request that anybody that has an issue, big, small, whatever, put it on paper, and there was a format of maybe eight questions. Fill that out, circularize it before the meeting, and then there could be an hour or a couple of hours taken, discuss the issue, and invariably there would be people there who would, if they couldn't fully solve your issue, they would certainly give you a few very valuable pointers to try and overcome that problem, which I think is a real credit to Vistage.
No, I think it's a very welcome assistance to every business, so it is. And where we are sitting in Uri, your business especially has got two markets, really. We're very close to the border, so we are. And you've probably seen so many shifts over the year with that market and the volatility between the two sides. What changes are you seeing now with property across the border and property in the north? Are you seeing a lot more transition from the south to the north, with people coming residential and so forth?
I think the way sometimes press build it up needed to be a bit more, and sometimes when BBC or some of the press would contact our offices, and you nearly think somebody's been feeding this person that there must be 100 people a week coming to Newry or that sort of thing. What I think there definitely are a lot of people working from home on the north side of the border for southern companies, Dublin companies, and maybe only have to go to Dublin 1 or 2 days a week. So I think that has certainly grown considerably. yeah, I mean, invariably, in the Warren Point Trevor area, there will be on some of the higher priced properties, there will often be a southern interest there, and whether people have heard from existing ones or their family or friends, and they have some connection, they've discovered this area and how beautiful it is and how attractive it is in a lot of ways, and they, and especially with the flexibility in home working, there have been certainly a number who have been attracted to it and stayed. I think probably more recently, and we probably all read that report from the Dublin people about they're needing more, is it 6,000 more homes for Newry?
Yeah.
I think it was, yeah. And certainly with the improved Translink service and trains every hour, I mean, Newry really has come much closer to Dublin, and it is very much currently been used as a commuter.
A real hub now, isn't it?
Yeah. I'm not sure, certainly in that report, of which I read bits of it, I thought to myself, a long time before we're going to get these 6,000 houses in Newry. We're struggling at the moment with the NI water problem. I mean, there's not as much private housing in Newry now as there needs to be, but I mean, certainly if that's the way forward for Newry, I think Newry would be well fit to make it happen and see themselves as a hub for Dublin more so than has been.
Yeah, and we see a lot more. Newry has transitioned massively over the years as well, and we've seen a lot more investment coming through for companies. So it's booming with businesses as well, and to try and get businesses into property is difficult in this area as well, isn't it?
Yeah, and we had an auction a couple of weeks ago, and we had a site between south side of Newry, and very, very often anytime we have sites between Newry and the border, there would be southern interest, southern activity, whether it's Dundalk or further afield. But in this particular case, the couple who bought the site were Belgian. They'd been living in Cavan for a number of years, had tried to get planning consent locally where they'd been living, but because they were immigrant and didn't have any family, because certainly Carniford and Dundalk area, we often come across situations where people can't get a site pass because they're not connected to that area, or their family's not from that area. But this, a few weeks ago, was a first whereby these people had tried all sorts of ways to get planning, but because they're immigrant, it just wasn't going to happen. So they took the view, right, we'll go north of the border. We want to be in Ireland. We want to be not that far from Cavan. So they were successful in buying a site, and I suppose that just brought to remind me just how different the planning for one-off sites is in the south and the north, just because of that characteristic.
And if somebody was wanting to buy land or go to an auction, or what advice would you give them before they decide that they want this property? What would you advise them to do? What due diligence?
Well, we have a process, and really, again, going back to my father's time, my first 10 years in the office, all the land sales would have, most of the land sales would have finished in the office, but he always felt the private treaty method was the best in his day, and he felt that it was important to keep bidders from not knowing if their neighbour was bidding or their best friend was bidding or whatever. So the way we finished them was that when it got to a certain stage, a certain element of bidding, my father would say, right, we're going to call a meeting in Trevor Hill offices next week, get your solicitor to speak to the vendor solicitor, check out the title, because if you buy this, you're going to have to sign a contract and pay a deposit. That was all fine. But so we had maybe 6 different offices in Trevor Hill premises, and usually there was enough for bidders But his view was if you put 2 or 3 neighbours in a room together, they're just going to stand, look at each other, and only one of them's going to bid. So he insisted on this private rooms, and nobody would actually know who's in there. And I would go around room to room. The bid is now 340 into the next room. They might put 5,000 on us now, 345, and so they didn't know who was bidding. What I didn't like about that was that I picked up snide comments from people in the country not trusting us and saying, "Well, sure, how do we know there's somebody in that room?" So as the years went on, I took a view. I'm going to try out this auction process because I generally don't believe that my father's long held belief that they'll not bid against each other if they see each other in a room.
Yeah.
So over time, tried out a few auctions, and lo and behold, he was right in some situations, but maybe only 15 or 20% of situations. If the men wanted land, they would either, and they still do it today, when the land's advertised, they'll go and talk to their neighbours and they'll decide who's going to buy this land, or my grandfather stood down for your grandfather, so you'd better, now it's my turn to buy this, that type of situation. So that's done no matter what process is used. But what we find now is, and I feel we've got the process nearly right, it's transparent, and nobody can say, "Oh, there's nobody in that room," or whatever. And to me, that is important, that the people bidding and buying are confident that it's transparent, they can see clearly. And my father always instigated me the situation with, look, if the bidding stops at 350 and the owner wants 450, withdraw the farm and negotiate it. And very often in that situation, sometimes the bidder will take a view, well, there's a contract here, I could secure this. Maybe if I give another 10 or another 20,000, maybe I should buy it, and nobody else will get that opportunity. And over the years, I would say probably 20-25% of our auctions maybe are concluded by way of negotiation because the vendor's expectations have been higher, or maybe a few neighbours got together and the bidding isn't quite where it should be. But by negotiation, sometimes they don't sell and they might come back a week or two later. But more often than not, as long as people know the truth and they are the highest bidder, and they will say to me, "I'm the highest bidder, why should I bid anymore?" I'd say, "Your offer is not acceptable to the vendor, so we have to move on. There has to be a process."
And it's going back to, the market value will always dictate, the value of that property, where the demand is at that particular time. We can see it with vehicles, where you've got one particular vehicle where there's a high demand for that vehicle. That's where the market value lands, really. Is it the same thing in land?
Yes, very much the same thing in land. And usually in the first few weeks when land is on the market, you get a reasonably good flavour for the interest, and if there's a lot of phone calls, there's likely to be a lot of bidders, or we've got our guide price too low. But you soon can detect the ones that there's going to be significant interest in.
Yeah. And even, you growing up through the company and so forth, even as a boy, you were very avid with rugby. You were very disciplined, sports. And can you tell me any more about that?
Yeah, rugby, I suppose, was very much in the family. My father would have played way back in his day for both Methody and Queen's University, and was always keen that we would play rugby. And probably really from about 10 years of age, we went to boarding school, would have played rugby, and even through his busy schedule sometimes, and because Robson's or Allams was due to in Belfast, sometimes if there was a match on Tuesday, he would appear on the touchline. But he was very supportive, and both parents were that, but encouraged into rugby. And even when his grandkids came along, he would have been very hands-on in bringing them into mini rugby in Belfast and Banbridge Rugby Club. And after mini rugby, he might have a few things to do in the office, and he would bring, and these are really John's three boys, Simon, Mark and Rory. If they finished mini rugby, as long as he got them lunch somewhere, chips, whatever, if he had an hour to do in the office, he would bring them in, and they'd be messing around with a photocopier or different things. But he had a great bond with those three boys especially, and they were the three oldest grandchildren. And I suppose another story that comes out of rugby and connected to auctioneering, when I was playing for Banbridge Rugby Club. This was after university days, and I was also involved in selling the fat sows in Points Pass Livestock Mart. And if we had an away match, and I would usually say to Peggy quietly in the office beforehand, "Look, Peggy, I need to get away from here at 12:30," and she would say, "Well, just don't get caught in any sows today, and you'll be all right.
You'll make it okay."
So there'd be a few times, it would be, if the dealers would get a whiff at all that I was in a hurry anywhere, they would just try and slow the whole process down. So it was a challenge against them, and sometimes me arriving later than I would like for my rugby matches, but there was none got missed.
I think that's always the trade. I mean, my brother Paul would play rugby as well. I remember we were always open to 1 o'clock on a Saturday, and he was, chomping at the bit to get away. But you knew that if you had a customer in front of you, you just couldn't walk away. It was really, really difficult. So you were really torn to, I really want to go and play this, but I still have this to contend with, So it's but a great discipline as well.
Yes, and team sport, you've got to recommend it for children. It definitely is. It teaches a lot, and if you're out of line, your teammates will pull you back into line and
keep you grounded.
Keep you grounded, absolutely. A lot of happy days and great support from Banbridge Rugby Club over the years. Yeah.
Brilliant. So, look, we'll do a quick fire myth busting section where literally I'll ask a few questions and just let me know if you agree, disagree, or you fall somewhere in between. But so, is it better to wait for a crash before buying?
To be in a crash, sorry.
No, is it better to wait for the crash or the property crash before you actually commit onto the property ladder?
Well, if you can get your timing right, that property has got to the bottom of the market, then definitely you're going to get that better value. But
if you can hand out crystal balls,
but I suppose in terms of major crashes, there's only really been one in my 45 years, and I don't think many of us would ever want to relive that one. It was never. It might have been. We might have thought in the boom days this was just great, and there's no end to this. Thankfully, back at that time, my brother in London was able to give me a bit of a heads up on what was happening there between banks and one thing and another 9-12 months before it was actually coming, which was certainly helped me, but it was not pleasant times.
No, I remember that.
And yes, those that did buy in the recovery time, 2010 to 2013, 14, did not regret or look back. And I suppose, yes, you're maybe referring also to sort of smaller rise of the market and dips in the market, but
life is timing, isn't it, really?
A lot of it's timing.
Would you say property always goes up? People look at property, and apart from the crash, would you say that was probably the theme that it naturally is on an incline?
Yes, and I think I used to be able to kind of plot 10-year prices. I think it was one of the exercises I'd done, maybe one of Vistage, but certainly in a very simplistic fashion, every 10 years, a 3-bed semi would double in value. And we have certainly gone back to historic figures, been able to show that. Now, maybe not in the past 10 years or so, but that there was certainly 3-4 decades when that would have been a very broad rule of thumb. 3-bed semi double in 10 years. But then there's been quite a lot of changes in the last
in the last while. Would you encourage a huge deposit to get onto the ladder?
For those that can manage it and can get it from wherever, yes, far better to have as much equity in the house as you can. Different people have different mindsets, and some people just believe in mortgaging to the hilt. It wouldn't be my view, but if you can get money. I remember when I made my first major purchase, and it was a house on 14 acres of land, and I could not afford it. I could get a mortgage of so much, but I went round the family, and my mother agreed to sell some of her stocks and shares as long as I paid it back in 5 years. And I did that, but I took a view, I want this, because there was land with it. But I would certainly encourage anyone, touch the family first of all before you go for the
empty the coffers.
I fully accept all people aren't as fortunate maybe as I was at that particular time, but go for it.
And we talked about high interest rates. Is it a bad time to buy? But we were talking about high interest rates, how high they used to be.
Yes, and certainly my early years were interest rates, and farmers were facing interest rates of 18-19%, and buying what they thought, quite rightly then, paying £2,000 an acre for land was just absolutely crazy. But today's interest rates are a lot more modest, and they fluctuate up and down, but they're still a long way off those heady days.
Absolutely.
But I suppose there's plenty of other cost of living crisis and all that makes up the difference, I suppose. And as the generations go on, if it's not high interest rates, then there's always something threatening there.
No, indeed. And I suppose now you've gone through the business, and at this stage in life, after the business and family and hard work and the experiences that you've gone through, I suppose what matters more to you now? You're working a 3-day week. You're taking a little bit more time to yourself.
Yeah, it's certainly nice to have those couple of extra days, and the weekend starts on Thursday evening. And whilst I'm still keep an eye on the emails Monday morning for an hour, it is pleasant. And after I reduced from 5 days to 3 days, I joined the Kilbroney Ramblers, and I'd always enjoyed walking the Bournes, and myself and a couple of other guys used to do it probably from 20-25 years ago, and then joined the Kilbroney Ramblers. They go out on a Tuesday and a Friday, and generally I would only go out on a Friday. And whilst I haven't been out for probably 4 or 5 months, and I'm due to be back there next month, it's very relaxing, good bunch of people, and thoroughly enjoyable to do 4 or 5 hours in the mornings. And I thought I knew the mornings well till I joined the Ramblers, and lots of new paths there all the time, but very satisfying, very enjoyable, and good company.
And do you find that, because I love to get out for a walk or a run, and clears the mind, and you start to think about things more logically and practically, would you find that on those walks that you're coming back with new ideas, or the things that might have happened in the office during the week, you have resolved them all of a sudden?
Yeah, no, very much walking's my thinking time, and my own kids sometimes can't understand how I can go for a walk without ear pods or whatever. But And most mornings I try and get a 20-minute or half an hour walk in, and I find just clears the head, thinking time. But certainly in the mornings, and even I suppose when I finished playing rugby, there was always a nucleus of guys who were happy to go for trail runs, whether through Kilbrony Park in Trevor or the lower Mourns, and we might go out for an hour on a Monday evening. But I suppose just that discipline, and once you're into that habit, you just keep it going, and it certainly stood by me. But yeah, it's very much thinking time for the day ahead.
Yeah, and now you have Olivia and Kyle both in the business. They have their own sections of the business that they look after as well.
Yeah, very fortunate. I would never have. Well, I didn't really expect or think that there was a likelihood of any of the kids coming along. And I suppose over Vistage days, I had always picked up the theme that there are some family businesses out there which are nightmares, and you would come across them from time to time through different clients. So I was always of a mind that whilst I might be fourth generation, that if the business ended with me, it'll be better that than pushing your children into something that they may not want to do. So when Kyle graduated in Edinburgh, and he told us he was going down to London and maybe might look around for a few jobs, and we didn't even discuss what type of jobs. And then he phoned a week later and said, got my first job in some estate agency in London. I thought, that's maybe a bit of a message coming through there. And over the period of maybe 6 or 7 years in London, he I think worked for 3 or 4 or 5 different firms, really just looking for more experience. And then he decided to come back to Dublin, and he did worked for 2.5 years in Sherry Fitzgerald, which was great.
Great experience.
Learning curve, good experience for him. And probably he was about 2 years into that in Dublin, and it was COVID times. Olivia she'd done a degree in Edinburgh, then she'd been attracted. She was also musical, attracted to University of Limerick, and they only take 12 people every year for music therapy degree. I might have that wrong, but anyway, it was very much for those that want to go into music therapy, using music as therapy. And she was due to potentially join up with a firm who could use her skills in September of that year. This was about April, May, during COVID, and she was home, and she said, any jobs go in the office? And I said, well, actually, we have a girl going maternity leave. And she was in there, and after week 1, she said, this is much different than I thought. I said, you used to have us in here in school holidays sometimes, up in the attic, closing old archive files and doing horrible jobs. We never
got the good stuff.
Yeah. So after week 2, she said, I quite like this. And it just kind of went from there, and she blended in. And whilst Kyle would be more the salesman, Olivia is the one with the empathy. Yeah. And I could see certainly where clients were warming to her, and she had that way with her. So then, of course, I would tease Kyle a wee bit and say, well, it looks like Olivia's going to be on the show, and you've done all the training.
Bit of healthy competition.
Yes. So 6 months or so later, he followed suit, and I'm delighted. Off the back of that, then there was a guy retiring in Mourne Point, and I went to see him, and he reminded me that I had a conversation with him 3 or 4 years before that about the same thing. When was he going to retire? And so we came to agreement, and we bought his practice. And my main kind of thinking there was, kind of let me get on well together, and hopefully we'll always get on well together. It's probably easier for both of them if they're not under the same roof. Yeah. And or have an opportunity here to have them under different roofs. But then I may as well do that. So that was kind of part of the motivation, and worked fine. Although whenever Olivia then went maternity leave for her first, Guy was very quick to take the Warren Point seat in the office, because it was a shorter journey from home every day for him. But no, that has worked out fine in that interim period.
And you must be very proud to have them in it now and working with a great mindset and a great mentor as well.
Yeah, and I think they are fortunate that we had a great team of people before they arrived in the business, and they respect their elders and they respect those people who have a lot more knowledge than they do, and they're all getting on fine, and certainly that's the way it looks from where I sit anyway. Yeah.
Well, it looks to be going very well. So if we can reel back around to the Texas story, because this is quite, don't know very much about this, so maybe you can allude to how this occurred.
Yeah, so my father, over his time, had all sorts of businesses, and took on various partners in different sort of businesses, whether it was hotels, which was himself and a couple of other guys founded the Belmont Hotel in Banbridge. There was a cattle breeder in Cheshire, Charlie cattle breeder in Cheshire, who he got very friendly with over sales and auctions, and the two of them took over some bookie business. They had 3 bookie shops in the north of Wales.
Real entrepreneur, really.
And that maybe lasted 4 or 5 years. I don't think it lost him any money. And he's also set up a company, just a cattle company, with that same person from Cheshire. He had a plant and machinery business with a few people for maybe 5 or 6 years, which didn't work out so well. He would have tried his hand in property development, and thankfully not locally, but in England. And Craig and he were using some of Craig's contacts and doing a bit of property development in that part of the world, which didn't really work out that great. But it was always looking for new things, and certainly much more entrepreneurial than I would be. But one of the things that came across his radar, the importation of Simmental cattle and Charlie cattle pedigree into Northern Ireland back in the late 70s, early 80s. And it turned out that because Ireland was disease-free status, we were one of the few countries that could export these cattle to America. And so we would have been, John and myself and my father would have travelled down to Cork and Waterford, left home at 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning, and might have had 4 or 5 farms to go around, whereby you're looking at pregnant Simmental heifers or cows, and you're buying those calves for onward export to the States, maybe after a few months after they were born. And through, we had a Scottish guy who was doing all the logistics and looking after that end of things. And the Scottish guy, Al Phillip, got very friendly with a ranch in Texas called Rio Vista, just outside San Antonio in Texas. And the process was refined to try and cut a long story short, that we were exporting to this Rio Vista Simmental farm. And these calves were being bought and sold over there for as much as £2,500 for young calves. So over the process of a few years, my father decided, rather than taking the money out of America, he agreed with the Rio Vista guys that he could buy a share in the ranch. So at the time I had finished school, this was quite a viable business going on in his mind, as well as juggling all the other things he was doing. And I thought, it would be nice. So we talked around the kitchen table about maybe an opportunity. And because I'd done my A-levels just at 17, I was being encouraged to take a year out before I went to university, and I had my place in Newcastle lined up, and I worked between A-levels and the following January, February, and then went from February to September. So I got to this Rio Vista ranch at outside San Antonio, and this guy, Al Phillip, was there to meet me. On day 2, he said to me, he took me for lunch and said, Garry, I need to talk over a few things. The Simmental market has taken a bit of a crash this last few months, and there were a lot of Wall Street investors, as sometimes Wall Street investors do, apparently. Simmental cattle was seen as a big thing, and
real commodity, yeah.
You could buy these and make a lot of money at it. So that was starting to get a bit weak, and this Rio Vista had filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy. So I had the unenviable job of ringing my father that evening saying, Dad, your 132th share, whatever you have in this place,
Zero, yeah.
Don't count on it going too far. It just isn't going to happen. So Al knew I was there for hopefully 6 months. I didn't want to go back home until September, till university started. And he said, I have a brother who runs the International Simmental Ranch in just outside Kansas City, Missouri. I'll give him a call. So within a week, I'm up there. He was a guy, Gordon, and I lived in his house for the first 3 or 4 days. He had a couple of young kids, but he had a terrible marriage, and the shouting.
It's too much.
I need out of here. And the other 2 farmhands, the guy Jim, who was a grumpy sort of individual. The other guy was Leo, who was a half Indian, and he and I just gelled from day one. So I was in the bunkhouse on day 3 or day 4, I think it was. Very happy to be out of the family house. So I had 4 months there, and pretty well every day was riding horses and rounding up cattle, pregnancy testing them, dosing them, whatever, or getting cattle in for heifers in for artificial insemination, all sorts of things. What an
experience.
Just absolutely living the dream, living in a bunkhouse.
And did you absolutely love it? Was it?
Oh, it was just absolutely super. And I'd done a wee bit of horse riding as a kid, so when I knew more.
You took to it really quickly, yeah.
And this guy, Leo, a half Indian, he and I just got on like a house on fire, and just struck up a great friendship. So about June time, last week or so in June, Gordon summons me to his office one day and said, Irishman, the figures here just aren't too good. This Wall Street crash from a number of months ago was hitting this industry, and I don't think we're going to survive. Is there anywhere else you can go apart from back to Ireland? And I said, well, I have one contact in my little black book left. And I said, I'll see what I can do there. So my brother John had, at one of the cattle auctions at Rio Vista Ranch a year or 2 before that, John had met this guy, Garry Peterson, who ran a 37,000 acre ranch in Montana. So he'd given me his number. I phoned Garry straight away, just said, yep, come on up. We're just about to start the harvest, and here's where we live. So within a few days, I was on the Greyhound bus from Kansas City over to Denver, Denver north to Billings, about two and a half days back then. Just lovely way. I mean, you hear about these Greyhound buses, and I'd seen a wee bit of it when I've been out there, but lovely trip just to do that. And this ranch on day one, Garry took me in the pickup, and I kept saying, we still in your ranch? We still in your ranch? So it was, I think it was something like 15 miles by, it was quite long and narrow, but maybe 3 miles or something. Never really worked it out. But a lot of it was kind of brush, rough ground. They only really had, out of 37,000 acres, they had 2,000 acres, which was arable, but they could only grow crops once every 2 years because the ground was very dry. So it was a mixture of jobs, not as much horse riding, but more driving trucks, straw chopper and that. But
I mean, and the story could have been so much different if you just had made a different decision in those early days.
Yes, and I mean, really, I was very grateful, and very fortunate that my father had those connections and made it happen. And I went out then after I graduated, and I went out to see the same guy, Leo, with a friend from uni. And we had a couple of nights, and then off we went. We did a kind of 2-week tour of the States. Then, out of the blue in 2011, I get this email saying, "Are you Garry Best, who worked at International Simmental Ranch, Kansas City, Missouri, back in '76, and signed Leo?" And I thought, whoa. So there he was. He'd never been out of the States before. He'd come to Dublin. And I didn't know he had a sister in Dublin. He had a sister who had married an Irish guy in Kansas, and then they were living in Dublin. So he lands into Newry. By email, I direct him where the office was. Yeah. He's 6'4", and he was wearing a Stetson hat. He and I walk from the office.
Slightly out of character in Newry.
Yeah. Walk up to the bank bar, which is about 200 yards, and the cars that were slowing down, and who is this cowboy literally walking up the street in Newry? And we had lunch in the bank, a long lunch, and no beers.
A lot of reminiscing, I'm sure.
No beers. And he said to me, "You never stop talking about Acton House and Points Pass in this place. Where is it? Is it close to here?" So I phoned John and Simon. I said, "You guys there? If somebody want to come out?" So drove out there, showed him around that, back into Newry. And before he left, I said, we need one more trip. So we put the bones of a trip together. We'd meet up in Montana in a couple of years' time. Mm-hmm. And that was 2011. Off he went. His sister picked him up back to Dublin, didn't hear any more, and then took up the reins again. Managed to talk one of my friends, a retired solicitor, locally, to join me in a trip to Montana, which we did in 2013. And two of us went out, met Leo in Billings Airport, and drove to this ranch. And it was a ranch you pay. It wasn't a dude ranch, which is very touristy, but a ranch where you paid to work there for a week.
Yeah, real working ranch, yeah.
So the three of us had our own bunkhouse, and we were riding horses every day. Again, similar pregnancy testing, testing these cattle. And a lovely ranch owner who... his wife and family, we had 2 meals a day with them, and got very friendly with them. And so after that week was over, I said farewell to Leo. And he had been telling me during the week he had a pacemaker fitted a few years before that. And it's very much this Indian thing whereby they can't adapt to the Western diet. And back in '76, he would have been a fair boozer in terms of more just beers, not harmful. But so he'd had the pacemaker and he was waiting for heart surgery. And about a year after that, Fiona and I were in Scandinavia and got a phone call from his sister, and he died.
Oh, what a character.
Yeah.
What a character.
It was just a lovely farewell. Yeah. Not knowing he was going to be leaving us all. He would have been in his 50s at that stage.
Well, he really must have bigged up Points Pass, because if he trekked the whole way to see Points Pass.
yeah, a long way to see Points Pass. Yeah.
Absolutely. So we're going to come to this final section here, where just a quick peek into your car history. What was your first ever car?
Renault 5.
Renault 5. Mm-hmm. Brilliant. What a car. And now they've brought it back an electric version as well.
Really?
And
right.
They've brought back the Renault 5, the Renault 4, and fully electric, and it's doing amazing. It's absolutely brilliant, but it's lovely to see that iconic car coming back in. So it is.
Yeah. My mother had it, and then I persuaded her when I come home from uni that
you should have it.
I would be the worthy owner of it for a year or two. Yeah.
If you walked out into the showroom or any showroom wherever, what would be the dream car?
Well, I probably enjoyed the Mercedes over the years, but I got a very nice Volkswagen hybrid car here in Shelburne, as you well know.
I didn't pay you for that.
No, you didn't pay me for that, but I am very happy in my little Volkswagen Golf.
Fantastic.
I'm not doing the same mileage that I used to do, and a car like that, especially the hybrid bit of it, automatic.
Yeah, it works perfectly for you.
Caroline, so
brilliant.
I'll not be back here for a year or two yet. Get a bit more mileage out of this.
Well, at least you're coming back. That's the great thing. So, and if people want to find out more about you, even the Visage program, more about Best Property Services, where do they find you? How can they contact you?
My website, or the Best Property Services website, bestpropertyservices.com. My mobile number is there, my email address is there. I'm not precious about people ringing my mobile number. But
and they can reach out for advice.
I like to be available for anybody that has property queries, land queries especially, whatever. But I would, and especially even younger people looking to go into that business or that type of thing, I'd be more than happy to talk to them.
Fantastic. Garry, I could honestly talk to you all day. There's so many stories we haven't even covered off here today. But thank you very, very much. So that's it for another episode of Break Time. Garry, thanks so much for joining me and again sharing so openly. I hope you've enjoyed it. And if you've enjoyed the episode, don't forget to subscribe wherever you get your podcast and share it with someone who really loves a great success story. Thanks for listening, and join me next time with more guests, more stories, and more inspiration. Thanks.